Welcome to Module 2B. Module 2B focuses on what is a business plan and why do we need it. Here are the objectives for this module. We're going to start by talking a little bit about the product planning process, a mission statement, a vision statement, and then get down into what is the business plan, what does it contain, and what are the parts, and who's going to read it, and how you should focus that business plan to get the attention of the reader. This module focuses on Chapter 7 of the textbook, which is part of the reading for this week. One of the two chapters for this week. Well, first, we have to take a look at the product planning and development process, or product planning process. It's 5 stages. The first stage is to come up with some criteria. One of my questions would be to you, is why do we need some evaluation criteria? Well, the answer very simply is that you want to know when you've been successful. In other words, what's considered good enough, what's considered the right level of functionality of a product or service to get out into the marketplace. As the story I use is the Alice in Wonderland, the Cheshire Cat. Alice was walking along and she saw the Cheshire Cat up in the tree and said, "Which way should I go?" Because apparently at that point there were a number of different roads leading off of the main path. And the cat replied, "Where do you want to go?" Her answer, "I don't know." And of course the cat replied, "Then it doesn't matter which road you take." So again, come up with some criteria. What's the success? What's the product you want to get out there into the marketplace, and in what kind of form, so that you know when you've gotten there. The second stage is to look at new ideas. We are going to talk about that in detail in terms of analyzing both the ideas, where they fit, the industry that they're in, a whole variety of aspects, but we'll take that as the class progresses. The third stage, sometimes it's called the concept stage. What else could it be called? How about a prototype stage? All right, many businesses use a prototype. And today there are things such as virtual prototypes and methodologies to do mock-ups and even computer-generated prototypes for testing. Kind of get a feel for whether or not the product will actually work, whether there'll be some customer acceptance. The word concept, if you're familiar with the automobile industry has used concept cars for years. The latest version of the Thunderbird that was reintroduced a few years ago is a concept car. All right, and they use that word quite frequently. Go out and develop the product, use a consumer panel or a variety of, we talked about focus groups and things like that, ways of coming up with ideas, see what the reaction is. And finally, test market the product. By test marketing, we mean going out to a limited group or a limited geography and seeing if it works, seeing if it has customer acceptance, if people will buy it. it's certainly cheaper to test it in one geographic area, perhaps close to where the company is and where the product is produced, rather than to roll it out nationwide, only to find out that there are some significant problems. One of the things that a company has to do, an entrepreneur, you, is to come up with a mission statement. The mission statement should be 1 or 2 paragraphs, certainly less than a page. It should be market-oriented, not product-oriented. It should be focused on how does the customer benefit from what the company produces or provides. So again, you're looking at it almost from the customer's eyes. What value do you provide to the customer? It should be realistic and specific. It should have in it distinctive competencies. You know, what makes your company different? And it should be motivational to your employees, to you. Certainly express that motivation to your customers, your creditors, and everybody else. Well, this is, as you can see, this is an example of a mission statement. I don't know if you think it's good or not. I wrote it for my company, so I think it's good. Perhaps you disagree, but that's your prerogative. But here, at least it's an example. One of the other mission statements, there is on the Moodle website, you'll see a resource that shows that has a link to the Enterprise Development Center here at NJIT, and you can find their mission statement on there. Again, done pretty well. Need another place to see a mission statement? Go to Wendy's. All right, look at the Dave Thomas statement. That's their mission statement. You'll find it someplace on the wall, typically near where the door is, where you enter and leave the Wendy's. Companies should also have a vision statement. And here is a version of my vision statement. Again, I wrote it. I have since updated it a little bit. You'll notice it makes reference to Arthur Anderson, who is no longer in business. If you want to see the current version, it's on my website, www.ziese.com. Basically, what a vision statement says is, where are we going? All right, it's looking forward, and again, tells your employees, your customers, your lenders, your investors, anybody who's a stakeholder in the business, anybody who has an interest of any sort, even the community would be interested in seeing what your vision is for your company, how it's going to grow or not grow, and where you're going to take it from where it is. Let's now take a look at the business plan. Here's the definition. It's written by the entrepreneur. It describes what the market is, where it's going, what the industry has to do, and again, we're going to go into this in considerable detail as we move through the course. And the idea of the plan is initially to go and find funding, find financing support, and to guide the entrepreneur as they go along. A couple of audiences for it. Obviously, the entrepreneur is a Person who's going to read it, is going to write it. But the entrepreneurial team, which may consist of more than one person, bringing other people in along the process, they're going to need to know it. The key people in your organization, and if it's a small company, maybe it's all of your employees or your partners, need to know and agree as to where the business is going. The marketing perspective looks at it through the eyes of the customer. What does the customer gain? What value does this business provide? What benefit? And lastly, the investor or the lender's perspective, and we'll talk about investing versus lending later. They're looking at the finances. And that typically is an important part. The grading of your business plan by me will be done from the investors or lenders' perspective. I'm going to look at this to see if it makes sense, to see if the numbers come together, if the plan is coherent, if the risks and possible downsides are taken into account, and some statement is made as to how you're going to deal with them. So again, I'm going to be looking at this and grading your business plan as an investor. The reason why we want a business plan is that it makes you really think about and answer questions, as opposed to ignoring them and saying, well, we'll deal with that when we get to it. The idea is that a business plan is not reactive, it is proactive. All right, you don't do it on the spur of a minute because some investor or some lender has said, hey, I want to see your business plan before we'll talk about a loan or an investment. You have to do it up front before you even start the business and get it moving. It's a blueprint for the business. It's not carved in stone. It is not something that once you create it, you should file it away. It's a growing, living document. And it's a roadmap. It's a guide. It's not meant to hold you to things. You try something, you try some idea, perhaps a marketing plan, marketing approach that you've written in the marketing plan portion of the business plan. You find it doesn't work, you go back and you change it. It's not a straitjacket. You're not locked into it in any fashion. Well, the business plan has to be written for this course in order to pass it, obviously. But more importantly, in the real world, a business plan really has to be written because of the reasons specified here. It makes you put down specific information, makes you think about it, identifies your opportunities and the feasibility of your business. Also makes you identify your weaknesses and your problems. And if you think that your potential business has no weaknesses and no major problems, you're probably wrong. Okay? There are always problems that are going to come up, and there are always issues and weaknesses that you're going to have to deal with. So put them down up front, make some statement as to how you expect to address them, and go from there. And lastly, the business plan, if it's written, you can measure performance because you want to see how does reality, the business, once you start it, how does it compare to your original plan? And if there are differences, and usually, if not always, there are, what needs to be changed? Well, one of the questions that I could pose is what things in the original plan could be changed. Answer: everything or anything. The product or service itself could be changed, could be modified. The pricing structure, the marketing plan, the production scheme. Maybe you decided to produce it yourself and that doesn't look very profitable. Maybe you can find outsource the actual production and have somebody else produce it more cheaply and more profitably for you. But again, you can go back and modify the plan, modify the business. Again, the business plan has to be a living document that evolves over time. Where do you get your information for putting together the plan? Well, one of the things you need is market information. We're going to talk about that in the marketing piece. Identifying the market, identifying who your customer is, what does that customer look like, how do we reach that customer, what's the best vehicles, media to get your message out to this big world of consumer markets or business markets if it's a business-to-business product or service that you're going after. Again, lots of noise out there, lots of competition. You have to figure out how to reach the people you want to reach. Operations information comes from places. We'll talk about that as we move along. Things like manufacturing, labor, supplies. How competitive is that? We'll talk about that in industry analysis. Excuse me. Industry analysis and our product itself also. And lastly, you need financial information. We will talk in the next module about pro forma statements, which mean for form, but we'll go more into that in the next module. This comes out of the text, and the only thing I will disagree with personally is about the 3 years. 3 years is difficult. 2 years is pretty good. I mean, if you can do a 2-year forecast, a 2-year prediction of your cash flow and balance sheets, that's pretty good. 1 year is about the minimum that you're going to need. 2 years is better. 3 is really good. The only time you might need a 3-year is if you have a very long development process and a long time to get your product to market. Then, of course, you're going to have to figure out how to stay alive for that period of time until you actually have some money coming in. Information for the business plan exists out on the internet, and I'm sure most of you are more technologically adept than I am, although I consider myself a pretty knowledgeable computer user and internet user. There is all kinds of information out there, and information is power. You can research your competitors, your suppliers, the marketplace. There are trade associations out there with websites, lots and lots of stuff, and we'll talk about getting that information as part of the market research that needs to be done. Here's an outline of the business plan. You'll see that on Moodle. All right. I discussed that briefly in week 1 in module 1A. All right. Showed you where that exists. There's another link this week to that plan. The outline, if you'll take a look at it, you'll see that it contains minimum size and maximum size. The reason for this is just for purposes of this course, need to set some boundaries and expectations as to what you should deliver. I don't need you to deliver a 100-page document. I'm looking for quality, not quantity. So again, they are there. Are there other outlines? Yes, I believe the textbook even has a slight variant on this business plan outline, but they all contain the same information. They just present it perhaps in a little different order. This is pretty much a standard one, and the one that I want you to use for the purposes of your business plan that you're submitting for this course. Again, if you look back at the outline document that's on there, the appendix is optional. Financial plan is the 5 documents that we'll talk about next week. And you'll see that the other things are there. There are some notations there that if you quote statistics, make sure you cite the sources. And if you make certain statements that the industry is this big or the industry is growing at X percent per year, according to some source, cite that source. Put it down in the footnotes. The text provides some interesting questions and raises issues in Chapter 7. If you'll look in the textbook at Table 7.4 in the text, you'll see, and that's around it's actually at page 214 in the textbook. Looking at industry analysis, again, we're going to come back and look at that using something called Porter's 5 factors. Porter's 5 factors. But for now, take a look at Table 7.4 and the things that are the questions and issues that are raised there. How to describe the venture is in Table 7.5 on the same page. Production plan, the text puts down some questions on production and delivery, whether it's a retail business or a service business, in 7.6. And finally, in Table 7.7 on page 218, the organization structure. Again, we're going to go through these things in detail as the course progresses, but they kind of give you some ideas. Well, business plans fail. Businesses fail. And sometimes the business fails because of a poor business plan. But again, as I talked about in the first week, sometimes with that little sample business model, sometimes things happen that aren't predictable, that are outside your control, major disasters or just business failures in general. So they're not always related, but if the business plan fails, chances are the business will fail. Well, why? May have underestimated the time and the money that was going to be needed to make this business work and be profitable. The goals were too aggressive, just totally unrealistic. Maybe there wasn't enough of a commitment. you have to be committed to success, but I do not personally believe that commitment, total commitment, means totally committed in terms of your time at first. Again, going back to the prior week, maybe you keep your day job, or maybe you have a night job that, as a waiter, that enables you to pay the bills, live, continue to survive, to get your business going without making stupid decisions and unrealistic decisions. But again, and I believe you can be committed and totally committed to your business without having to spend 100% of your time on it. Knowledge, got to learn the industry. Have to be able to talk the talk and walk the walk. Know the nomenclature, the lingo, the terms of the business you're in. Be able to talk like you're someone who really understands that industry and that business. Now, sometimes this can come back, and we'll talk about this a little more in the legal piece, because sometimes what happens is an entrepreneur goes to work in the industry and then quits and goes off and starts his own business in the same industry as the company he or she was working for, and that can be a problem, because if you're not careful, you may have signed a non-competition agreement as part of your employment contract, or one of the conditions of your employment, and your ex-employer may start waiving this thing and threatening to take you to court because you signed a non-competition agreement and now have started your own business in competition with that company. That's a real problem. We've had it with a number of the young entrepreneurs who have started businesses either through the small business incubator or other ways of doing it. You have to deal with it. Sometimes you can make an agreement, sometimes you can convince them that you're really not a competitor. But it's a problem that you should be aware of. Does anybody really want or need your product? If you think the world is out there waiting for your product or service with bated breath, you're wrong. Chances are somebody's already making it, somebody is providing a substitute for it, or people are getting along with it just fine. I cannot think of a single thing that I absolutely have to have that doesn't exist, that somebody should make. You're going to have to convince people to part with their hard-earned money to buy your product or service. And you better make sure that they understand that they want it and that they need it. Otherwise, again, it won't be successful. And perhaps the entrepreneur has looked at the world through rose-colored glasses, who has ignored potential threats and what the weaknesses and risks are in the business, and has just, gotten too cranked up and too positive and didn't really look at the downside, and that can be the cause of failure. Okay. Take a look, as I said, take a look at the business plan module, or take a look at the outline of the business plan that's on Moodle. Also take a look at the sample business plan. Again, that's in week 1. That will give you an idea of what to strive for in terms of a business plan. Do I expect it to be as long? No, that is longer than the guidelines that I give you in the business plan outline. But again, that was a really good, an A-plus business plan that went to the Kaufman Entrepreneurial Competition out in Ohio, and Ms. Mayo just did an excellent job on that plan. In our next module, which is for next week, we are going to look at finance. And I mentioned the word the term pro forma. We're going to talk about that and what it means and some of the problems that have happened with pro forma statements. And we will go through the 5 financial documents that or pages that will be part of your business plan that are required for the finance piece. So I look forward to you joining me in the next module. Thank you.